Hi everyone. I hope we enjoyed module 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And this is module 6. We're coming very close to the end of our training. I'll quickly share my screen so we can be on the same page. Here we go. All right, this is self-care. This is one of my faves. So this module focuses on the importance of self-care as a foundation for emotional resilience and effective caregiving. It helps educators and parents, including people that work in public or private sectors, recognize signs of burnout, understand compassion, fatigue, and learn strategies to maintain well-being and healthy boundaries. So at the end of this module, you would be able to understand the concept of self-care in compassion, fatigue, and burnout. Yeah, this is a very short module, so I'd like you to hang around with your reflection journal. Identify personal and professional boundaries. These are learning objectives. I'm mentioning them. Let me start all over again. So the learning objectives, you would be able to understand the concept of self-care, compassion, fatigue, and burnout. Identify personal and professional boundaries that protect emotional health and build a personalized well-being toolkit. I'm sure you want to have this to sustain balance and energy. Okay, so let's go straight to what we have for this module. Okay, I'd like us to just discuss how recognizing our own energy helps us prevent burnout and model healthy habits for the children around us. Please put it in your reflective journal. We'll discuss this at the end of our module. So let's understand compassion fatigue and burnout. Compassion fatigue, I don't know how many of you have heard of that word before, but it's an emotional and physical exhaustion caused by caring for others. You're exhausted when you care for others over time without adequate self-care. Someone asked me recently, you're always looking out for others. Who is looking out for you? As a counselor, we are there. We must be there looking out for others, but who is looking out for us? And that was a very deep question and reminds me of self-care. And burnout, like we already know, is a state of chronic stress marked by tiredness, reduced effectiveness, and emotional detachment. Yep. So what are some common signs that you feel when you're in this situation? You will feel constantly tired, irritated, or detached. Difficulty concentrating or sleeping, loss of motivation or sense of purpose, increased cynicism or frustration towards others. So which of these signs have you noticed in yourself or in your colleagues? Let's share. Please put it in your reflective journal. These are things that you're going to submit at the end of module 7. Okay? All right. Let's go over to the next point, setting personal and professional boundaries. Boundaries protect your time, energy, and emotional well-being. They are not barriers like the word implies, boundaries, but they are healthy limits that help you stay balanced and effective. Some examples of healthy boundaries: saying no without guilt when workload is overwhelming. Sometimes you just have to tell your colleagues, I'm sorry, my table is filled up, because you don't want to break down. Setting screen-free or work-free hours. This is very important, and I like to go by the rule 888. There's a rule called 888 rule, and that rule simply says 8 hours for sleep, 8 hours for work, and 8 hours for your personal life. If you can practice this, it's going to be very, very productive for you. Avoiding taking students or children's problems home emotionally. This is very important. Having clear start and end times for work or caregiving tasks. All right, let's just have this discussion. Think of a time when you felt emotionally drained. What boundary could have helped protect your well-being? Put this down in your reflection journal. Let's look at this scenario briefly before we proceed. A teacher volunteers for every committee and frequently stays late. Every school committee, social committee, welfare committee, food committee, this teacher is there. Environmental committee, community service committee. Lately, she feels unappreciated and exhausted. What boundaries could help her restore balance? How might guilt or expectations play a role in her burnout? What small realistic changes could she make this week? Please help this teacher out. All right, let's go over to the next point while we're waiting for your responses. Let's look at building our own well-being toolkit. And a well-being toolkit is a personalized set of habits, practices, and supports that help you recharge and stay grounded. Components to include would be physical self-care, like nutrition, having proper balanced diet, gentle exercises, not necessarily going to the gym, but if you can't go to the gym, of course, why not? Awesome. Rest, not just sleeping to wake up at 4 a.m. or 5 a.m. as the case may be and rush to work, but proper rest. Breathing, these are physical self-care you should include in your well-being toolkit. And emotional self-care include journaling, gratitude, and mindfulness. Social self-care, connecting with friends, support groups, building positive support systems, very, very important. You connect with friends by hanging out with them once in a while, making phone calls, laughing with them. These are ways to help your connection stay positive. Professional self-care would include supervision, mentorship, and realistic workloads. It's important to have a mentor. If you don't, please canvas for one. And it could be a local or international mentor, and a supervisor that would always check up on you. Support systems are very, very helpful when designing your well-being toolkit. And now we're going to design our well-being toolkit. I think that's going to be the package, the huge assignment for this module, to design your own well-being toolkit. And this should be divided into 4 columns. When you're designing your well-being toolkit, please include body, mind, relationships, and work. List 2 self-care actions that can commit to each in these areas. 2 self-care for your body, 2 self-care for your mind, 2 self-care for your relationships, and 2 self-care for your work. Please, as soon as you're done, submit. Remember, routines are very important. They build up into habits. Make them daily rituals so you can stay well. Very, very important. And we have a reflection exercise that everyone should get involved. I told you that this is my favorite module. This is my best module because it's really, really tasking. We all have to get engaged because burnout kills. Seriously. I've worked in an environment that people just slumped and you don't know what killed them. They just slumped and died. You don't know what killed them. Burnout takes lives. So it's important to work and rest. Self-care is very, very important. As little as it may seem, nutrition, sleep, and rest, very, very important. So you're going to write a short letter to your future self, reminding your future self why self-care is essential and what you will do to protect it. Please send it to my email address. I want to see this letter. Okay. So don't forget, in our discussion today, we said normalize conversations. Okay. Self-care is not selfish at all. It is not selfish. It is for your life. It is for your life. Rather than going to the hospital every now and then, self-care is very, very preventive for future health problems. Remember to keep your tone reflective and supportive, not judgmental when you're having these discussions. Use calm background music during your exercises to help your mind. And remember your breathing exercises as well. When you're walking, you can even do this on your way to work or your way in the bathroom to the bathroom, or you're preparing your meals and all. Your breathing exercises, very, very helpful. And remember to keep a gratitude reflection journal. You can't pour from an empty cup. Take care of yourself first. It's the most generous thing you can give to yourself. And before you can say you want to give to others, you must be able to cater for yourself. All right, so this is module 6, and we head over to module 7 right away. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to submit your questions, and as well as your reflection journal. Remember the letter to yourself, the email you're going to send to us. All right, so module 7 is where we call it a wrap. Advocacy and community action. Very, very deep. We're going to just highlight a few important things. Please pay attention as we tag along. At the end of this module, module 7, you should be able to understand how families, schools, and communities can work together to promote mental health. You would be able to develop strategies for advocacy and awareness within your circles of influence. You would be able to plan or support well-being events and peer-led initiatives. You would be able to encourage open, stigma-free mental health conversations. Very, very important. And let's look at advocacy. What does it simply mean? It's a process of taking action to support or defend a cause, a person, or group. It involves influencing policymakers, stakeholders, and public to address a specific issue and achieve a particular outcome. Yeah, it is not totally different from going to fight. It is totally different from going to fight. Some persons think advocacy is actually fighting. It is standing up for a cause. Yeah, giving your voice to a cause. Why is it actually needed in mental health? I'm sure someone will be asking. Is it not politicians that do this? Nope. Mental health advocacy is vital because individuals with mental health conditions may face stigma. Like we looked at it in our first module. Some culture don't want you to even talk about mental health. Some organizations, I've worked somewhere where they don't want to hear about mental health. They think it's a negative language. They think it's a problem, you know. So mental health conditions may face stigma, lack of access to care, or be unable to speak for themselves effectively. So advocacy can give a voice to those who have been historically marginalized, challenge unjust policies, and promote the well-being of individuals and communities. There are different ways for this advocacy to take place. It could be personal advocacy, and this involves an individual speaking up for themselves or being supported by someone else to navigate the system and express their needs. This can include informal support from family or friends, or formal support from organizations. I hope you understand that. I believe you should understand. And please, where you do not understand, send me a message, all right? And we'll always break it down and do personalized sessions with you if you need further explanation on this. Peer advocacy is another kind of advocacy in mental health. Here, individuals with experience advocate for others, you know, people that have several years of experience, they advocate for others with similar experiences. This can be particularly powerful because it comes from a place of shared understanding. Yeah. Collective efforts to raise awareness is very, very important. You know, you can mobilize resources and create change within your community faster. Okay, so but there are some principles for good advocacy, which number 1 is inclusiveness. We must ensure a wide range of voices and perspectives are heard and included, not a selfish ambition. Equity, working to create fair and just outcomes for all, not a selfish ambition. Rights-based, framing issues and actions around the fundamental rights of individuals, not a selfish ambition. Evidence, you must use research, data, and facts to make case and build credibility. Please, very, very important. And finally, for the principles, transparency is very paramount. Being open and clear about your goals and methods and funding, because a lot of persons use this to raise funds for themselves. Okay, now in planning this, there's something called theory of change. It's a logic model approach that you could use, a strategic planning tool that aligns the causal relationship between your activities and the changes you want to see or you want to achieve. This also helps to identify the long-term goals and specific short-term outcomes that need to happen for the goal to be reached. It also helps to visualize the path from current problems to desired future solution. You could also use the SMART objectives. Of course, the SMART is very popular and everyone knows that: specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time-bound. Yeah, you could use the SMART objective to achieve advocacy. You could also use stakeholder and power mapping. This is very, very powerful because visually identifies all individuals, groups, or organizations that are affected by or can influence the issue. It involves analyzing their level of interest or influence to prioritize who should be targeted. Power mapping focuses specifically on understanding who holds the decision making so that you can actually get results. So this is critical. And what relationships can be leveraged to gain access to and influence that target. It identifies potential allies, opponents, and key influencers to inform your advocacy strategy. So you should be able to define your events and program. How do you do this? First step is to clarify the purpose and goals using the SMART. The SMART framework, like I mentioned earlier, has to be specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. You can identify that for your event or program. So for well-being events like workshops or wellness days, you should identify your audience first, right? Who is this for? Is it for employees, for students, or for a specific community, or a group of persons, or the general public? Then choose a theme. Select a specific topic such as stress reduction, digital detox, or healthy eating. Then start small. Don't just go and say you want to have a big event and all. Start small. Consider a single session workshop or half-day event before planning a large-scale retreat. Then establish a timeline. Within 4 weeks, I want to see this achieved, or within 2 weeks, and start with your survey and end with your feedback forms. Very, very important. Then for peer-led initiative, remember we talked about different types of advocacy. So we're looking at how to go about it. For peer-led initiatives, like support groups or mentoring, decide on a purpose. Define what the group aims to achieve. Is it for emotional support or resource sharing or personal growth or professional growth? Please define it. Then determine the structure. Will it be open for new members to join at any time, or is it going to be a closed group? Okay, and also outline leadership. Who will decide what? Who facilitates what? Do you understand? I believe you do. Please, if you don't, send me a message. We'll be here to respond appropriately. Then also set confidential rules. Establish clear guidelines to build trust and create a safe environment. Yeah, the next thing you need to do for this initiative to succeed is to build a team and a secure buy-in. Even peer-led initiatives need a strong support structure and team. Very, very true, very important. Form a planning committee and list 2 to 5 individuals who are enthusiastic about well-being to plan the events. Then engage leadership. Secure a buy-in from senior management for workplace events or school officials for student programs. Their visible support is crucial for participation. Yeah. Then involve the community. If it's going to be a community event, align with local needs by gathering feedback from the public. This is very helpful if you work in an NGO. Yeah, the peer-led initiatives should engage members in strategy and action to build trust. Another thing you can do for this peer-led initiative is identify and train peer leaders. Very, very crucial. Recruit peer leaders who are passionate, trustworthy, and able to maintain confidentiality. Training should cover communication, active listening, and boundaries. We've mentioned this in our previous modules. Another step to take is organize logistics and resources. Very, very critical. Create a budget. research findings, sources, yes, seek government grants if you have to. This is where transparency is very, very important. Seek grants, government grants, private sector supports, corporate social responsibility, or explore crowdfunding for community initiatives. You can as well choose a location and time. Yeah, provide appropriate tools and resources. Very, very important for your advocacy initiatives. And the shared role of parents, school, and communities is so large, so large, but we're going to call it a wrap. If you have any questions, please, we are here to respond as fast as you can, or you add it up to your reflection journal so we can discuss this more elaborately. So some examples of initiatives to include in your planning and organization of wellbeing events or peer support groups would be Wellbeing Week. It could be in school. Yeah, you have your Wellbeing Week. You could have parent support circles for safe, confidential spaces, to share and learn. You could have peer ambassador programs. And these are things that we have tested and tried over the years, and they have worked. You could have community walk for wellness. These are very, very important initiatives if you work in a school environment. The other ones we mentioned earlier will work very well if you work in an NGO space. What kind of event or group could your school or community start this month? I'd like to know. Please be creative in your responses and remember to relate it to local needs. Let's look at this scenario before I call it a wrap. A local school notices rising absenteeism and emotional outbursts among students, but few parents attend meetings or talk about mental health. What barriers might exist to open discussion? How could the school and community work together to reduce stigma? What kind of event or partnership could encourage participation? Please send in your responses in your reflection journal. All right, as we begin to call this a wrap, let's look at encouraging help seeking and normalizing mental health conversations. Is this very important? Yes, it is. Talking about mental health should be as normal as talking about physical health. We're used to saying, oh, I have an headache, I have malaria and typhoid, I feel pains here and there, my leg hurts. But very few times we talk about mental health and mental concerns. So we should be able to normalize our discussions around mental health. We should model openness to children, learn that seeking help is a sign of strength, not weakness. And there are so many ways to encourage seeking help. Share stories of recovery and resilience, display mental health posters and hotline information in schools if you work in a school or in a community. Include mental health topics in your PTA meetings and staff meetings and all. Use positive language, all right? For instance, it's okay not to be okay. Yeah, use those kind of words to encourage openness. Train peer supporters and wellbeing ambassadors. All right, so we're going to have this final reflection exercise, my advocacy commitments. You're going to write down one advocacy action you commit to in the coming months. For instance, it could be starting a wellbeing club, hosting a talk at a church, school, or community center, or sharing accurate mental health information online, or supporting someone to seek professional help. I've given you some expos already. So please choose any of these or any one of your choice, write and send to our email. We would appreciate this as we call this a close. Now, the things to keep in mind, celebrate small advocacy steps, all right? Not just large events, but those little ones that you did very small, celebrate them. Use real examples of successful communities and mental health initiatives. Then conclude by linking advocacy to sustainability, very, very important. Change begins with consistent conversations. And remember, advocacy is not about speaking for others. It's about creating space so everyone can speak for themselves. I hope you had a beautiful time during this training session, and I'm hopeful that in 2 minutes, we're going to get your complete reflection journals with all the answers included. Thank you and have a beautiful day.